Hi, everyone. Are we good, sound-wise? Yeah? Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my talk. I hope you all are having an amazing Indigo so far. Excited about day 2. Let's see what today brings. But as Alessandro said, I'm going to talk about Metro Awakening. But before that, real quick, I'm a Breda University graduate. I graduated from the game design track. Breda University gang, hands. Woo! You know, we have a decent number of us in this industry. And I joined Vertigo Games as an intern at the time, and it was about pre-production for this project. And I was on board for pretty much most of the game. Quick legal disclaimer out of the way before we get started. I am no longer employed at Vertigo Games. I do not represent Vertigo Games. However, I'm incredibly grateful for them for giving me their blessing to stand here today. Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Before I press the obligatory trailer button to show you the trailer of this game, right, I have a question. Who here owns a VR device? That surprise always trips me up, because I'm like, VR is like a niche thing, right? Not many people are into it, but there's a decent number of people that still have VR devices at home. Which MetaQuest, anyone? A decent number. Yeah, that's always surprising to me, but this is just like, VR is such a cool medium. I think it's a bit niche, but it is maybe making its way onto the main market. We don't know. I'm not an expert on that. So, what is Metro Awakening VR? What is the game we built for a VR device? It is a standalone, story-driven adventure that was penned by the original author of the Metro series. It is about the origin story of Khan, who is like a side character in the mainline series, which is well-beloved. So we are basically, in this story, exploring a bit more of his story. In this game story, exploring his story a little bit. We built this game in Unreal Engine 5, and it was simultaneously released on MetaQuest 2, 3, PlayStation VR 2, and PC VR. Now, I'm going to press the button for the trailer. There's a jump scare at the end of it, so if any of you are sensitive, I'll hold out my hand, you'll know, okay? There we go.
Stare into the flame. Think of this fire as a beacon. Its warmth, its energy. Now, focus your mind on your wife and step into the void.
Coincidentally, we're actually going to be talking about the level that appeared in the trailer. If you missed it, I'll talk about it. Don't worry about it, right? But before I talk about how we made these levels, I'm going to talk about how we made levels in general. Everything for this project started with a brief. This brief contained what gameplay type it is. So is it a trolley section? Is it a gameplay section? Is it like a combat section? This is the type of it. The narrative, the overall narrative, so what is the story arc that is taking place within this? What is the location? Is it like a home station? Is it an outpost? Is it a metro tunnel? All of that is dedicated by the brief. And then every brief is assigned a level designer and environment artist duo to work on it together. And after every gate and every level, we have approval by management just to make sure we're on the right track to, like that we're doing that we're on the right track. That was enough. So L0 is our paper design. This is where we look through the brief, what that is expected, and then we will go find references for what we need to build, and then we will also basically just sketch out a couple of layout ideas, and then after all of that, we put everything on a paper designed digitally with the intent, okay, this is where you start, this is where you go, this is where a gameplay moment happens, this is where a narrative moment happens, this is all on paper. This is also a moment for us to sit down with other disciplines where we might need assets from. So if we need animations, bespoke animations, if we need AI support, if we need audio, all of that is a moment for us to sit down and be like, hey, this is what we might need in the future, or this is what we want to do, what is possible. That is where we get those people involved as well. Important to check in every now and then, you know. So L1 is approved. We head out to L2, L1. L0 is approved. Okay, I pressed the wrong button. There we go. L0 is approved. We go to L1. This is the block out, gray box, white box. I think every studio has their own name for it. This is basically where we build the entire level in gray blocks. The ceilings are gray, the floors are gray, the walls are gray, everything is gray, except gameplay elements. Those have different colors, but those are also just blocks, right? The gameplay needs to be implemented here for the most part, but it does not need to be polished. So there's still allowed to be some bugs in there, which is fine at this state, but it does need to pretty much be playable from start to finish. Additionally, after this is approved, we leave notes for L2, since L2 doesn't immediately happen. For Metro, we built the entire game in L1, so you could play the entire game in its gray glory. It was not, it worked, but it was not, you know, the atmosphere that you expect from a Metro game. So L1 is approved. A couple months later, we get to the L2, which is, there we go, the feature complete. This is where the textures are in, the environment art is in. The environment artist had like a field day decorating the level, and then you as a level designer come in later and you're like moving a bunch of the things because now the nav mesh is broken and the player can't walk anymore. Happens to the best of us. And this is also where the gameplay needs to be finalized as best as possible, no bugs, as best as possible. Again, game development is hard, but as best we can. But most importantly, it needs to be optimized for target hardware. In this case, MetaQuest 2, that thing is amazing for getting VR into people's hands, but it's like a glorified mobile, that thing, you know, that thing. It haunts our dreams to this day. I think my colleagues can confirm. Now, this was actually one of the earlier levels that I worked on. This is the Fight Nosalis in Chapter 7. We started working on this like right out of the gate, right out of pre-production. We had built the Nosalis for pre-production for the vertical slice, so this was like a very low-risk section. And while the story was not locked in by this point, we knew that the story of this section specifically was going to take place no matter what, because it's a pivotal moment within the game. The level is based on a pre-existing Metro Last Light DLC location. Anyone played Metro Last Light? Hands? Nice. For those of you that haven't, I know the backlogs are long these days. There's an amazing amount of great games, but put it on there. This one's worth it, I promise. So in the DLC, Khan ends up back at his home station, Polyanka, with another character. And during the DLC, they say something amazing that I really wanted to include here. Polyanka shows people things that need to be seen. In the event of the DLC, it is showing the player that Khan is haunted by what happened at his former home station. In our game, some more things need to be seen, but I'll get back to that. So, this is a recording from the DLC. I want y'all to pay attention to two major things, right? Look at the environment for me of how the station is set up, and look at the Nosalis behavior, okay? So we're going to compare later on. bit of a spoiler for the DLC, but Khan actually does end up blowing up the station. And, all of his friends don't really make it out, and that is the reason why it weighs heavy on him. But we have our platform, and we have our 2 metro tunnels, and then narratively within our game, we're midpoint about this point, right? Khan has gone on an adventure to try to find his wife who is missing, and this is a very rational medical doctor, so he's like, everything has an explanation, like there is no superstitious things. However, after going on an adventure, he ends up at Polyanka, his former home station, and he's confused. Like, how did I end up here? I was not even walking, traveling this direction. It's kind of weird. And at this point, he's like very much like, am I hallucinating? Am I losing my mind? Like, what's happening? Because he cannot explain the things he's encountering within the metro. He walks into that station, and then he finds around this cube is where you have like a lot of the living areas. So you have the metro carriages that they turn into tiny rooms, the living quarters and all that. He walks in onto his friends making tea, and he's like, wait, I thought you guys were dead. What is this? He's confused. His friends are like, hey, we'll explain everything to you in due time, but the Nosalis are out there invading us again, so you need to go deal with it. It's not our turn. We have done it enough. It's on to you now. He's like, okay, cool. Maybe they can give me some answers. He goes out to try to fight with the Nosalis that are invading the station. Now, this was originally the level that I had to work with for this section. However, I also kind of decided to close up this part because having a tunnel very, very wide allows the player to just sit in one tunnel and then have the Nosalis come in one direction, and that was not the gameplay intention I wanted. So I was like, block this off. I'm going to just work on this one section over there. The environment for this was built by the environment artist because it is a bespoke station that we did not have the assets for, so it was on her to kind of figure out the scale and everything of this. And because of that, because the level was already built, basically, I had the intention of like, okay, I'm going to focus on the gameplay, and what I want for this level is to basically create an arena for the player to like walk around a bunch, try to create space between the player and the Nosalis, and then, gather around, gather ammo. As much as you want to discourage camping, the player will cheese it if they have the opportunity to, but you can try to fight against it as best as you can, right? And also, I'm describing this in L1, so this is the gray blocks version. We need enemies to be able to fight enemies, so this is where we spawn them. These are one-way fences where the Nosalis can jump over, but the player cannot escape the arena. It's also kind of, for immersion's sake, to not have the enemy spawn in front of a player. That's kind of, kind of ruins any game. VR is bread and butter, like immersion is our bread and butter for this one. So then we have a bunch of half cover. These were, at the state of the L1, literally just blue blocks. Eventually they got set dressed into beautiful things, but just blue, right? I placed a bunch of these, and then turns out the Nosalis is kind of big. It's kind of a big creature, and whenever it would run up to the player, it would get clipped around the sides of these blocks. So I was like, okay, less blocks, got it. Now we have the space for this Nosalis to really like chase after the player and for the player to run around and get distance from it. Now, the combat, which I'm briefly going to get into before we look at the final product of this, right? For the combat, we use the Unreal Engine 5 sequencer. This is basically a timeline where you can add a bunch of actors to, and then you can dictate what happens on a time scale. I'm going to remove this picture. I don't like it. This is our timeline. So on this timeline, we have a wave manager, and this is pretty much an actor that keeps track of what are my spawn points, how many enemies do I have currently, what are the waves that the designer has specified. So for example, a wave can be spawned 4 Nosalises at these time intervals. So if one is dead, maybe it can be spawned again very fast, or if it can be spawned slowly. So the timings are something that we had full control over. Now, and then we also had a gate, and between the wave manager and the gate, there's a couple of other functionalities that I'm not going to get into for the simplicity's sake. But the gate is a moment where it checks, are all of the enemies dead? If they are dead, we can continue to the next section, because this is how I set it up. I had sections placed where it's like, okay, this is an easier section where we only have a couple spawning at the time, and the spawn times between them are slower, and then we have another section in the middle, and then we had different sections. I basically just placed them like Lego blocks after each other. And I playtested this for like a week, 2 weeks straight. I was like, this is our first combat level that we were building. I'm going to cook on this one, and I promise you it was really nice. I tested with everything I could. And when an artist is struggling with a level, it doesn't tell you a lot because they barely played the game. Not to shame on you guys, but you know it's true. But when QA is struggling, you know you messed up your balance somewhere. They play the game all day, every day, and if they're struggling, you gotta hit your balance up. So 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, I was like, this is perfect. Chef's kiss, this is amazing. It plays very well, the intention is there, the gameplay feeling is there. And then I left my L1 notes, and then we moved on. So here is a little recording of the L2 final version. So I do want to say, when I got this recording, it was months after, right? And my aim was a bit rusty. I promise I was better while we were working on this game, all right? Now, sit by the campfire with me for a second. I hope you brought snacks. 2 things changed after we finished the L1 for this level, and then before we started on the L2. The first one was the inventory rework. Now, the inventory was something that was still in an exploratory state. We were not fully sure what direction we were heading into. So that changing and being locked into something different than when we had it at the time of L1 is not a big surprise, right? And it influenced the level in minor ways, but it was still an influence. The second thing that was quite major was a Nosalis rework. So now this character went from being very fast, very in your face all the time, to being a bit more slower, a bit more taking a step back from you after swiping at you. Now, this meant that all of the work, the painstakingly putting the sections together, fine-tuning the timings, was basically trash because it no longer worked with the Nosalis we had. Now, the waves and the Nosalis numbers were tweaked in L2. So after L2, we came back in, we looked at the waves and the numbers. And then I do have to say the fight was a lot longer and a lot more intense when we built it in L1 compared to the L2 version. But that is kind of just how things go sometimes. Now, Fight Lurkers, Chapter 11. This one, the L1 for this one, I started working on about 6-7 months after the L1 for the Nosalises, right? And this time I'm like, hey, different, new me, we're gonna build this one differently. So, before I get into how we built it, I'm gonna quickly talk about the Lurker. The Lurker is a small, agile, prowler creature within the games. They are a menace to deal with in the mainline series, and I like to think that we kind of replicated that very well within our game as well. The way they attack you is they will stalk you, they'll run around, and then once you're not looking at it, they will run up at you, swipe at you, and then run back off. And they telegraph this in both audio and visually as well. They do like a little silly animation when they come at you, but you don't really see it because you're not looking that direction. They're kind of, so here's the video for that one. In slow motion. They're kind of adorable in a weird way. Their eyes lit up when you shine a lantern on them. It's one of the best features I feel like we've implemented into this game. Credit where credit is due. Now, again, I was a changed person by this point. 6 months have passed since the L1 and the L2. I was like, you know what? Instead of making something perfect out of the get-go, I'm just going to go for the bare minimum, the minimal viable product. So whatever minimum you need to convey the intent is what I'm going to build. And after that, we'll just polish it and make it better as we go on, right? So we have our full cover, we have our walls, we have our pillars, we have a place for the lurkers to enter, which there are a bunch of, there's a whole vent system running around the level where the lurkers can spawn without being seen, and then kind of jump in and out of the level without the player being able to see them or follow them out. So small lurker-sized holes. And then you come into this room, the door is locked behind you. There's also the half cover, but also this time, the half cover is not there for you to have distance between you and the lurker. This time, the half cover is actually there to give the lurker more space to hide beneath, to hide behind, to kind of limit your line of sight as best as possible, because again, this creature wants to run around, get a position where it can jump you from behind and then run back off. You come in, the door's locked, there's no way out, you are stuck in this arena, the way out is also locked, and there is a ghost guarding that door being like, hey, my friends need to be protected, I need to keep them safe, so the ghost basically cannot pass on into the afterlife until you have dealt with all of the lurkers that are attacking you. That being said, also this is chapter 11, pretty much by the end of this game, so this is very much a moment for us to be like, hey, we want to challenge the player, show them, allow them to basically show their mastery over the weapons that they've spent the entire game using. Now, before I press play on the L2 for this video, I increased the brightness for this recording. Important to note, because the level is a lot darker when you're actually playing it.
Shields.
So, I didn't cheat before I got this recording, so usually you give yourself, as a developer, you give yourself a full bag of ammo, right, before you get started. I didn't do that, and by the end of this fight, I was spraying and praying and hoping for the fight to be over as I was gathering the recording, and I dare say, I think we hit that gameplay intention that I had set for this level. If I had that experience, I'm like, yeah, we got it, we cooked. So, sit by the campfire with me for a minute. We should have asked Indigo for some catering, hopefully next time. For the observant among you, you might have noticed that I mentioned the lurker behavior first before I got into the level we built for it. Meanwhile, with the Nosals, I didn't do that, and that was very much intentional, right? So with the lurker, we sat down with the AI designer, and we really discussed, hey, what is this creature good at? What are the weaknesses that we should try to hide with the level that we're creating for it? So there was a lot of moments where we were like, okay, maybe we have a long hallway and tight corners, and that would pretty much get the lurker stuck in its running, for example, and clip on the wall, and we were like, we don't want to expose its flaws, as we say. And also between the L1 and the L2 of the lurker, we went from 9 lurkers in the level fighting you at the same time to about 6 at most because of performance reasons. And that is the challenges of VR. Unfortunately, you have to submit to the wills of the hardware on this one. So, quick roundup comparison with both of these, right? For the Phytnosalus's L1 was built by Environment Art because it was a bespoke section that needed the assets for it. The Lurkers, I built the L1 myself with the gray blocks. For the Phytnosalus's, it was a mutant that was fitted into an existing level that already existed. And for the Lurkers, we tailor-made the level for the mutant to make it shine as best as we could. For the Phytnosalus's, it was built to perfection first in the L1. We were very eager at the time, and also it was the start of the project, so you think you have a lot more time than you actually do. You know, for the Phyt Lurkers, it was minimal viable product first, and then eventually it was like, okay, whenever we have more time, we will polish it and make it better. But right now, this just needs to work. And the square actually kind of worked. I had ideas of expanding the level or making like a two-phase fight, but we didn't need to because it just worked. Now, the takeaways for this talk, we have, we've almost concluded. I'm going to say something very controversial, so please don't cancel me on social media, okay? Game dev is hard. Thank you. VR dev, game dev on its own is very challenging, right? It is a roller coaster where you don't know when the highs are, you don't know when the lows are, and you're a lot of the time just fumbling to get something together. VR is an additional layer on top of that because you're very much constrained by what the hardware can do. And as a designer, I find that like designers want to like go ham and make all the things that they want to make, but you are very much constrained to within the boxes. You can't make massive open environments because of performance. You can't do this because of performance. So you need to learn to work within the bounds of that level of the hardware. Now, know when to polish and when not to. So playtesting is good, and there's a saying that goes like playtest early and often, right? But work does not need to be perfect for you to convey the intention that you're trying to convey. It can just be, as long as the intention is felt, it doesn't need to be perfect. At the end of the day, also, you have a game to ship. You can't waste a lot of time working on something while you might think, hey, no, this section is safe, right? This is exactly what we're going to do. This is fine. This will not change. You don't know. It might. Now, another controversial thing, right? Games are made in collaboration, because there are some people that are very much capable of making games on their own, and those are unicorns on their own right. But a lot of the time, games are made in collaboration together with people, and I hear you say, well, yeah, duh, we make games together. But it is also a bit of a trap because a lot of the time, and this is something that a junior will struggle with and a senior will struggle with, we'll tunnel vision into our work because we're so passionate about it and we're excited about it, what we're building. And it really benefits like always taking a step back and getting extra eyes on it because you don't know in what way that feature will evolve once you get other eyes on it. Now, last, but certainly not least, there's always opportunities for growth. I think even when things don't go well, and I think especially when things don't go well, is when you always learn. Because it's like, it's very easy for you to smooth through something, but then you're like, okay, hey, cool, this was great, it worked. But once you're tested, once you're put through the ringer, to say it like that, that's when you learn, that's when you grow as a designer, as a developer, and that's when you really like level up. And also learning to accept that throwing something in the trash is not a waste. Sure, you can be like, okay, I wasted two weeks, but you learned a lot and you honed the skills needed to do it better next time. Yeah. And I also want to say these are pretty much my takeaways from having worked on Metro Awakening. This is what I left making that game with. So I hope it resonates with some of you as you've made your own games. But yeah, thank you for attending my talk. Are there any questions?
Test. Okay. Thanks for the talk. How do you account for the freedom of movement that a VR player has when designing a level?
Yeah. So within Metro Awakening specifically, we had 2 modes of locomotion. You would be able to stick teleport, like stick movement, so where you press forward and your character also moves forward, or you could also teleport. So you could aim at a distance and then your player would go there. So we had specific metrics for like how fast the teleportation would be and how fast the walking distances would be. And it was pretty much just like working within the bound set. Like we would have, hold up, I'm trying to come up with my words. It's basically you need to keep it in mind for the most part that a section you design for like stick locomotion is not the same as teleport. And it really helps to get someone in that teleports a lot through the levels to kind of find ways that you had missed. So for example, if you have like a lot of obstacles in the way, it might stop the player teleporting from being able to really walk a distance. And that is also when like additional testing of the of the teleportation kind of helps see the flaws that you've made. But it's a lot of it is just you build something and then you check it and then you repeat that cycle.
Makes sense.
I hope that answers your question.
Hello.
Hi.
I was curious, you mentioned a bit about working with like level design around specific enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned at some point that the Nosalis enemies at one point for development changed a lot, so you had to redo a lot of level design. Yeah. But you were also trying to build the levels, as you say, like trying to emphasize the strength of the enemies and kind of hiding the weaknesses. Yeah. So I'm kind of thinking about how to phrase the question, but I'm just curious about what the process was like working with AI designers as well, because I remember in one of my university projects, we had kind of a similar thing where we were working with custom AI, and it was a lot of back and forth with the AI designers and me as a level designer as well, where we were thinking, okay, right now the level is way too easy to kind of just run through and ignore the enemies. Is there a problem on the level design? Is there a problem on the AI design? So we had to go back and forth a lot and kind of discuss like that. And was it like that as well with you, or were you surprised when suddenly the enemies were changed a lot and you had to redo the level design a lot?
So for the Nosalis, obviously we had like monthly after sprint checkups with the entire company, so you would know what was happening and what changes were being made. So within the first level, because the Nosalis behavior already existed, it was pretty much a fit the mutant into this level, right? But for the lurker, that is when the lurker was actually just created, and then we had a formal handover between the AI designer and me to just kind of like, with me and other level designers as well, to be able to talk about what is this creature, how does it work, what does it need. And then there was also additional moments where when we were working on the L1 of the lurker, where we were like, hey, AI designer, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna figure this out, like, you know, like very much actively talking to each other, because it helps, because the level was not there. It was just, we were building it for the lurker. Meanwhile, with the Nosalis, we didn't really have that choice because it had to be fitted into the level. And it was the same with like humans, for example, and other levels, where you really sit down with the AI designer and try to figure out, or just a lot of messages back and forth, like, hey, I want to do this, do you think that's okay? Or, hey, I'm encountering this, is this a level thing, or is this a, like, how you made the AI thing? So constant collaboration and talking about it was basically, we started doing it more often as we went further along in the project. Yeah.
Thank you, Sule. That was a wonderful talk.
Thank you for
Appreciate
coming.
I like this approach of like tailoring a level to an AI monster or the behavior.
Yeah.
Would you now say like, hey, maybe we should have done that in other parts as well, or maybe not really because of reasons? Like,
as much as you would want to do that, sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to, right? As I said, for the first level with the Nosalis, like that one was already set, and I had no choice over the matter. Like that was a story beat that I had to basically adhere to. Now, ideally, you would say every level you make is made to flatter the enemy as best as it can, but you don't always have those opportunities. You are locked by story or some other constraints. Like we had a couple of human levels, for example, that were really cool, but we had to reduce the number of humans because of performance. So it's always a give and take, and you try to take as much as you can, but then you concede because performance and, you know, all of that. Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
Thank you very much for the
Hi.
talk.
Thank you.
You mentioned intent a lot when starting to design
Yeah.
the levels.
Yeah.
Can you say a bit more on how you talk about intent? What are some of the things that you discuss before you start your design?
It was more so like, I also wanted to, this is something that I wanted to say, but I forgot about it. I didn't have full curves in my, like drawn out for how I wanted the intensity of the fight to be, but I had a rough idea of like with the Nosalis fight, I wanted it to like ramp up, and then you had the highlight, and then it will basically drop off. And then with the Lurker, I wanted the intensity to start from like 100 and then like casually dwindle down. It's very much what works within this level, and then trying to convey like, okay, hey, I want the player to move around. I want them to have this feeling of like, okay, I need to run around a lot to try to avoid this creature. And there was no formal way of saying of putting it anywhere, but it was basically like, what you always also have an intention with a level before you start building it. For the most part, it's like, what do I want the player to experience in this level? And that's how you kind of work towards building that. Like sometimes if the level layout is not set, you can be like, I want the player to feel claustrophobic, so we have a lot of, you know, like tight corridors and all that. So it's basically, the intent is the number one. Like the brief is the number one, and then your intent is also like the thing that comes in after that. I hope that answers your question.
Hi, great presentation.
Thank you.
I was curious about the approach that you guys took with pickups and interactables, especially in a level with a lot of enemies.
Yeah.
Is there ways that you avoided enemy interruption while opening like the weapon locker and collecting all the ammo so that the player has that opportunity?
I don't think so, actually. I'm trying to think about it. I'm looking at Ruben. No, we did not. So it was basically you as a player had to try to find a down moment to gather your ammos and pick up everything. So there was nothing formally in there.
I thought maybe with like the wave sequencer, if that time was accounted for.
No.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the talk.
Thank you for coming.
I wonder how you dealt with changes that happened during L2 and after that, and how you communicated that with other departments when the art departments came in, and how that affects your workflow. Can you tell anything about this?
So a lot of the time, L2 is basically environment artists come in, you know, they make the place look beautiful, and then you come in and you change a lot of the work that they did because, again, it's cutting into the nav mesh, the enemies getting stuck on things. So those are basically just a message that you shoot to the responsible environment artist of that level, because, again, every level had a pairing that was responsible for it, and it was like, hey, I moved these things around, I did this a little bit, or if it's like a major thing, where we had one level where the environment was already fully built, but I had to make adjustments because the gameplay wasn't working as well. So that was like a producer, we have a bit of a problem, right? And then basically like not a meeting, but just basically flagging that this needs to happen, these things need to change, letting people know, and then also just doing the work. And then eventually we'll have like the environment artists also check the work that you did to make sure we are fine with, because they have their own building guidelines that they need to adhere to. Very much just like a back and forth, just either just messages, hey, I did this and we're good, or if it's a major thing, bringing in everyone else that is involved and addressing that. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it did. Thank you.
Hi, lovely. Thank you. Hi, lovely day. I would like to ask you questions about results of Metro Awakening and your opinion on that results. As you know, previous games of Metro series like Metro 2033 and Metro 23 Last Light and Metro Exodus, and those their DLCs about Полковник Хлебникov story and Sam. Those games were pretty succeed. However, the case with Metro Awakening, that that was not so pretty success as previous versions, previous games. I mean, reviews were not that good. I mean, what do you think about it? Is it an issue about storytelling issue that's like step in past, step back to story of Han in Metro 3033 for Metro Awakening, or is it issue this concept that Metro is kinda not so good game for VR technology, because Metro is stelazite. It is dark and kind of claustrophobic sections, and it's not so good in VR, because in VR, I guess the player wants to see a massive scenery, a massive cutscenes. It's not possible in this case because it's Metro. It's dark. What do you think?
So I have a lot of thoughts. Obviously, I worked on this game. Don't laugh at me. So the first things first, I do want to say, I do think Metro lends itself very well to VR. And this is something the original author, Dmitry Glukhovsky, also said. This is how Metro was meant to be played. Because once you are in that headset, you're in that Metro world, it feels amazing to be in it. Now, that I think is a massive win on our part. I think that is something that we were able to convey really well. Now, that being said, yes, Metro Awakening didn't review as well as the other games have, but that is partially also the direction that we decided to head into, right? Metro is mostly known for, like, you have your story moments, but you also have your high action moments, your high action, like, combat gameplay, you're sneaking around and stuff like that. For Metro Awakening, because we were a smaller team, we did not have the resources that 4A has, we kind of decided to, this is more going to be more of a story-based first, and we're going to have gameplay that supports that, but that was not our initial intention, right? So we had to make concessions somewhere because, again, we don't have the resources 4A has. That being said, again, the Metro games, I love them. They have a special place in my heart. And to some degree, I feel like we did right by those Metro games with the ambience and the environments that you are in. On other aspects, I would have loved to be able to make more combat sections. I would have loved to be able to make more puzzle sections, and it's just we did not have the capacity to do that. So it was a choices, and ultimately, again, it is a story that we wanted to focus on more than, and have the gameplay be a supporting aspect of that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, thanks for the talk. It was really enlightening. I had a question if you perhaps have any tips or ideas for me, because I work at a VR startup, and we have
My
access
apologies.
to... Thank you. VR development is hard, I have noticed. So we have access to a quite large free roam zone, and I was wondering if you have any tips for how we can optimize that room that we have to the fullest, if you have any nice level design tips for that.
I think that's a discussion out of the scope of this one, because again, for me, I'm not fully aware of like how to get something to be performant. I just know the guidelines I had, we did not have any long tunnels. There was a lot of bending in there, so you don't render everything that's in front of you, kind of stuff. Aggressive lotting. We also had very much like planes of like pre-computed visibility blockers, so it wouldn't render the rest of it. But it's I think that's a conversation that we can have outside of this as well, if that's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hi again.
Hi.
You mentioned that for each level, it was assigned an artist and a level designer.
Yeah.
Was that assignment like early on? Were artists involved in the L1 stage as well during the gray box to give like feedback, or how was the collaboration at the gray box stage, I guess?
So with every brief, you have this brief is assigned a level designer and environment artist. And some levels, like the gameplay levels, are designer heavy. That's where you have, where you're driving, the environment artist is sitting in the back seat. And then some sections we had that were more environmental sections where you as a designer are just sitting in the back seat and they're driving that. But that was pretty much from the brief onwards, and then you get to the paper design, you're doing that together, you're discussing everything. And then whenever it came to building it, gameplay sections were usually built, like the combat sections, usually built by the level designer. And the other storytelling, narrative sections, trolleys were mostly built by the environment artists. But sometimes we had to switch those up because of capacity reasons, right? If someone is way too occupied with something else, or we don't have the capacity for level designers, maybe some of them are on holiday or something, then it can be switched out. But it was very much a constant, we're partners, we're doing this together, and then we are both knowing what's going on as we go through this entire process thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the talk.
Thank you for being here.
You talked a lot about how performance is a constraint and this thing dragging you down and you want to go bigger. Have you had any instances of the opposite happening where something great happened or some new insight happened because of performance reasons?
That is a good question. I'm really trying to rack my brain. I'm just like, I think the fun part, it is a bit of a challenge, right? Because you are forced to work within the bounds that are set for you and you don't really have a say in it. I wouldn't say it has been like a surprising twist where it's a blessing because we can't do something big. But it's very much, I think it trains your skills as a designer and it improves that a lot to try to fit your intent into a space that you don't want, like that doesn't work, or maybe something that, I think that's the positive aspect of it, growing as a designer because of the constraints that you're dealing with, and not some kind of blessing because of VR, man. VR. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much for the talk.
Thank you for being here.
I was wondering, based on piggybacking off your question of collaborating with the artists, were you working with the same artists for multiple levels, or were there different artists? How did the collaboration go?
It very much changed. So for the first level, I had a different artist than the other one, but it very much depended on, again, availability, right? Who is available, who has a workload that is kind of manageable. So with one level, you work with this artist, the other one, you work with that artist, and then this one, you work with the same one again. But we had a really great team of like amazing environment artists that were really easy to work with. So there was never really a conflict of like, hey, we're going to do my way, we're going to do my way. It very much just worked, even though you were working with different people all the time. Mostly all the time.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you. Any last question, I think?
Nope, all done.
All done? No. Sasha had the last one.
Hi.
Hi.
I was curious about the process with working with an IP like Metro. Were there constraints given from like the previous Metro games and levels that you had to work on, or areas that needed to be made? Yeah, what the process was.
I mean, there was no constraint on this needs to be in the game. There was no constraint on that one. They were very chill about it, and we were also provided with assistance from them when it comes to like the assets that they had built for previous levels. So that was great. We didn't need to build, like, we still had to optimize those assets a lot before we could actually use them, but we didn't have to build them from scratch. But there was a lot of like, not a lot, but a decent amount of, this is a standalone, it should not touch up on the mainline series. That was pretty much the main constraint that we had received for this. So no, do this has to be in there. It was very much a choice, but again, it was also working with the original author, and he had ideas and thoughts about what he wanted, and a lot of it was also incorporating that into it, so, which was really cool, by the way. That was really cool to be able to work with Dmitry Glukhovsky on this game, and yeah, I hope that answers your question.